Merry meet, 'tis I, Rowan Ravenwolf, with Triple Goddess Apothecary and Reiki. I am here to talk about something fun, freezer spells. So if you've never done a freezer spell, I'm just going to kind of go into how to create it. I'm not going to give you a spell to do it, but I'm going to go into how to create it. So freezer spells can be used quite a bit of ways. So really, we're trying to stop someone from doing something. It could be gossiping, it could be treating you horribly. Um, you can also try to make them a little bit sweeter. So we're going to kind of go into that. So I like to use these little glass hexagon jars. I got like a ton of them. I think it was like 40 of them for like $12 or something like that. And so I like to use these. You don't have to use a glass jar because you are going to be freezing it. So you do need to make sure when you use the glass that you don't put the water all the way. As a matter of fact, you're going to want to put the water about halfway. You can use a Ziploc bag. You don't have to use it. But remember, the water is going to expand when it freezes. So even if you use the Ziploc bag, you're going to want to have it halfway. So what do you need the freezer spell for? We're trying to freeze something from happening. We're trying to stop it from happening. So I'm just going to kind of like go into the first freezer spell I ever did. I actually worked with an extremely toxic man, and he was prejudiced against everybody and everything. He hated women, was a huge misogynist. He hated you if you had any ethnicity at all. I mean, like, just was full of hate, and he was extremely negative and gossiped too on top of it. Like, he would, like, I've never seen a man gossip this much. I was like, what the heck? But he made it really difficult to try to work with him. And his desk, we have cubicles, and his desk was, I could see him from my desk. He was like across, like not quite across, like on a diagonal across from me. But everybody around me, no one liked him because of how mean he was. And I got so sick of it. I would tell my husband, I'm an Aries, so I'm pretty patient with things, but when I get pushed too much, I blow up like a volcano. And I told my husband I'm about ready to blow up. And he's all, put a spell on him. And I was like, yeah, well, and this was quite a while. This was many years ago. I think like 6, 7 years ago. I mean, I'd worked with him. I tried to be patient with him for many years before I put the spell on him. So the spell was like 6 or 7 years ago. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I actually gathered some of my extra black crystals, um, and put them off to the side. They had nothing to do with the freezer spell, but I'm going to let you know how it worked in. So what I did is I sat and I'm like, all right, how do I want this to be? Because I've got to have a healthy work environment, and this man is creating a hostile, negative environment. And I did not like the negative energy. I'd have to come home, sage myself, and meditate every day. But I'm saging myself and meditating to get rid of the negative energy before I even go in my house because I didn't want to bring it in my house. So I was like, all right, I got to make sure that this doesn't happen. So I wrote a petition, and on one side of the petition, I put his name and I wrote his birth date. Now, I only had the month and the day because we had a birthday chart so that um, you knew like those were days that we would bring in potluck and celebrate somebody's birthday. And so I was like, I'm going to look because I got his birthday. I did grab a tag lock too because I worked so close to him. I got in about an hour before he would get in the day. So I think it was like I grabbed a tag lock off his desk. I cannot remember what it was, to be honest, but I grabbed something that would be used as a tag lock. So he didn't know. Um, so I had my tag lock. I had his name, his full name, and the month and date of his birth on one side of paper. So one of the sides of the paper, I wrote, just grabbing a piece of paper. I like you need an example. So I just wrote his name, birth date. Then the other side of the paper, I wrote the petition. And before I wrote the petition, I actually spent some time writing down what I needed to make my work environment better. And literally it was just for him to shut up and not even talk to me. That's literally what I came down with. So when I wrote the petition, I wrote, if you cannot say anything nice and positive around me, you will say nothing at all. You will be tongue tied. So I have that. And then I grabbed some herbs. So the best way to figure out the herbs that you want, because your herbs can change, grab your encyclopedia of magical herbs. So it will help you figure out the herbs. So with this particular one, I added some sugar to my water because I figured maybe that would make him talk to me nicer, and sugar is a really good way. The nice thing is that the water is freezing. That's going to take time, but sugar kind of speeds things up, but also is a sweetener. You could also use honey. So I did use a bay leaf in this one also. I put some bay leaf, and I'm trying to remember, I put my cinquefoil. So it was cinquefoil, bay leaves, and some sugar. So I used those, put them in, lit my altar, and cast my spell. So I had my petition in there, and I'm like, I'm going to close you and freeze you. And I put them in my freezer. After that, I did a quick cleanse with one of my herb bundles. And then I did a protection spell. So the bunch of the black crystals I grabbed, which was tourmaline, black tourmaline, grabbed black kyanite. I did grab selenite, and then I was constantly always wearing my black obsidian. So I took that off, and I did grab also a quartz crystal so it would amplify all these crystals. And then I grabbed some of my black salt and I put that together, and I did a separate spell with those. So when I got to work the next day, I salted my cubicle with black salt, and I put the crystals by my computer. So they were there while I was working. And after I did the spell and filled the jar halfway with water and had the sugar, the cinquefoil, and the bay and the petition in there, I did put it in my freezer. It was the most pleasant day I had working with this individual. And when I say that, he was so negative. I was surprised he was still there because he got so many complaints from, I would say, almost everybody in the office. And he was tongue tied. He literally would be like, try to say something negative to me, and it wouldn't come out. He would start speaking, like he'd be like, well, you, and then he'd just walk away. And I was like, yep. To the point where everybody's like, what did you do? Well, I didn't tell anybody I did a freezer spell. So I kept him in my freezer. I haven't worked at that place in many years. Ran into him maybe 2 years after I'd left and forgot he was still in my freezer. And he came up and was actually very pleasant to me. He said, hi, are you having a good day? He was never like that when I worked with him. And then I was like, oh, that freezer spell is really doing its job. So freezer spells work. They can tongue tie. So they can stop someone negative that you have to be around. So when we are at work, we can't just walk away from our jobs because we work with somebody who's toxic. We have to do something. So a freezer spell works really well with that because you can sweeten them, put a little sugar in it, and you can literally put on your petition, make this person sweet, and freeze them so that they're going to be frozen in a sweet state. You can make it so that they'll stop gossiping. I actually did one for my son because he had some bullies that were picking on him. They'd picked on him for many years, and I finally was like, and I had them to stop gossiping and stop bullying. So you can stop gossiping, you can stop bullying, you can stop toxicity, you can stop negativity. We don't want that in our life, so let's get rid of it, right? I liked to use the sugar in the water. So if you don't believe in doing curses and hexes, this is really a binding spell to stop a behavior that is not good. So you can use it even if like you're in college and a university and you're dealing with toxicity, if you're in a sorority fraternity, same thing. As a parent, if you're watching your kid go through this, a grandparent watching a grandchild go through it, if your spouse is dealing with someone like this at their work, you can help them out. So this is kind of a nice thing. So you just want to make sure you fill your water. You don't necessarily have to do a petition, but it's good to put at least their name in there. You don't have to have a tag lock. Tag locks do make it stronger, makes your spell a lot stronger, but you don't have to have a tag lock. It will help if you have a tag lock. And even if you don't want to put a petition on, like on the back, if you don't want to do a petition of what you want, but you're going to have that in your spell when you cast your spell and you do it, at least have their name. You can put a picture of them. If you've got a picture and then write their name on the back of the picture or below the picture, the more information you have, the easier it is for the magic to find them. So that's just kind of the trick with freezer spells. So just a couple ways that I've used them. And there's so many different herbs you can use. But yeah, like the thing is if you want to just try to make them sweeter, because quite frankly, if you've got to work with somebody or you're going to school with somebody and you've got to see them every day, if you just add a little bit of sugar to that water, that will sweeten them. And you're not really going to cause harm. You may actually make them a better person, right? But that's a freezer spell in a little jar. So again, you can use a little jar. You can use a Ziploc bag. You could go as small as using a jar this size. You don't have to get one this big. They don't have to be really big. So, and I have a printer, so I will, if I have a picture of the person, I'll shrink the picture and I'll type their name. If I've got their birth date or if I've got their phone number or their address, you can really freeze them and put them in there. You can make them tell the truth in a freezer spell also. If you're dealing with somebody in your house that's toxic, like if you have a toxic roommate, or heaven forbid, I hope you don't have a toxic significant other, but if you have a toxic significant other, you can sweeten them that way too. So there you go, freezer spells in a jar or a Ziploc bag. Do me a giant favor. If you liked this content and you liked this video and you'd like more like this, give me a thumbs up. Then I'll know to make more videos like this. Also, like and subscribe and click the notify button and you'll be notified anytime I post a video or when I eventually go live, because eventually I will go live. Have a blessed day, blessed be, and merry parts.